Okay, a hopefully quick video on resizing images for the NIPA PDI competitions using Adobe Lightroom. This is done in the library module using the export dialog. So we're going to click on that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some presets for these for the sizes that you will need. Now these will resize, create a JPEG image of the appropriate pixel dimensions with maximum length of the edges that comply with the NIPA standard for both landscape and portrait. But we'll also talk about square images and images that are almost square, because they can prove difficult. So the first thing, we're going to create the presets. So what I would suggest you do is you create a folder on your hard drive. So we're going to export these to the hard drive. There's a number of options here, but we're going to export them to the hard drive. We're going to export to a specific folder. I think that that's important as well. And the default folder that opens up here in this dialog is my pictures, but you can change that. You can choose a different folder. You can then, you don't need to necessarily create a subfolder, because actually Lightroom will do that for you. So we're going to put in a subfolder, and I'm going to create a new subfolder called NIPA, whatever you like to call it. And then when we're done, we don't want to add these images to your Lightroom catalog. I don't think that that's a necessary idea, because it can get confusing with smaller images and things. So don't add them to your catalog. And with regard to existing files, this is about naming. So if you create a file with the same name, the dialog will immediately prompt you and say, what do you want to do? Do you want to overwrite, or do you want to create separate images? And you can do whichever is appropriate. I don't rename at this stage. That's something that can be done later in Windows, and it's really not important to this this demonstration. Not doing video, get rid of that. Now we want a JPEG image. We've got other choices here, but we want JPEG, and we want to keep the quality at 100%. This is the compression. There's no limit on the actual file size in terms of megapixels, but there is a limit on the pixel size. So that's what we're going to be resizing. Whereas this, we want to keep the maximum quality, and we want the RGB color space. We're not going to limit the file size. Now here's the crux of the matter here. Resize to fit. So what we're going to deal with mostly here is the long edge. So as you can see, this is previously set up for portrait size, so our long edge would be 1050. So we'll stick with that. We'll create a portrait preset at a maximum length of edge of 1050. Resolution at 72, that's sort of the standard for screen display. The next one is output sharpening. Now, this is something that is different from sharpening within raw processing and general processing in Photoshop or Lightroom. And the advice here is that you should do this, because this sharpens the image for the appropriate output, and in this case you've got a number of selections depending on whether you're printing or the image being outputted is for print or for screen. In this case it's for screen, and we're going to give it the standard amount of sharpening. Try this. If you like it, grand. If you don't have to use it, you can take it off, but I'm going to leave it in for the moment. Metadata isn't important in this circumstance. You must not watermark the image, and after it is processed, we want the image to be shown in a Windows Explorer window folder. So we're going to check that. You're going to do nothing. I mean, eventually you could just do nothing if you don't want to look at it, but we're going to show an Explorer, because what we want to do is check the dimensions of the image when we're finished. So that is for portrait. So I'm going to add that to my presets. I'm going to put it in this subfolder of DxO Labs, just to keep it easier to see. Now I can close down the user. Oh, can't at the moment. We'll close down that at the moment. So we're going to call this NIPA Portrait and we're going to create that in our DxO Labs folder. So there it is there. Now we're going to create another one because we're going to just change one thing, and we're going to change that to 1400 for landscape. And so we're going to add another here, and we're going to call this one NIPA landscape. Create that, and we've got our two folders. Now that's those created, so we can cancel out of that because we've got those saved, and we're going to pick some images. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work with, let's work with a portrait image. So we're going to select this image here. Again, we're still in the library module, and we want to create our JPEG. So this is portrait image, so select our portrait preset. There's our size, everything is as we chose. Click export, simple as that, and then Windows will create the JPEG, and there is the image. Now what we want to do now is we want to just check the image size, go into right click and then properties, and then from properties we can look in details, and there's the image, and there's our maximum length of that image. So that's that one done. Okay, so we can close that, and we can select another image. Let's select this one, and this is now in landscape. So again, export, and there's our export dialog. There's our landscape preset, and you can see that the long edge is now changed to 1400. We're going to export that, and it will open up a folder when that's been done, and there is our image. And again, we can check on the properties and details, and this time now we've got along the long edge, it's the top edge of the image, 1400 pixels, and it's a height of 933, which conforms to the NIPA standard. Now this is not 1400 by 1050, that doesn't matter. In the NIPA competition, if the image isn't using the full maximum allowance pixels, it doesn't matter. The projection will put a black border around the parts of the image that to fill the screen. So you don't need to worry about putting a border around the image, but it must conform to the size, the maximum size. Now, so that is landscape and portrait. There's a couple of other things to consider. If you're going to export a square image, then it must not exceed 1050. So basically then this long edge has got to be a maximum of 1050. So use the portrait mode for a square image, and if the image is approaching a square, in that the long edge in a portrait image is getting shorter, so the long edge relatively is going to be deeper, then you have to be careful about sizing. So if we look, for instance, at this image, which isn't quite square, it is slightly portrait, but in this case, which one are we going to use? Well, if we actually use the landscape sizing, export that as landscape, we've got this image here. But again, if we look at the properties and look at the size, we find that actually this image exceeds the NIPA allowance because the height of the image exceeds 1050. So by sizing it along the long edge, we've got the wrong size. So in this circumstance, what we need to do is apply a different preset. So if we, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new preset, and we can base it on either one of these. But what we want to do is actually take our portrait preset, in this case, where it's 1050, but change it to the short edge. Okay, so we want the short edge in this case to be 1050. So we're going to give that a new name, and we're going to call that NIPA. What are we going to call it? Squat. And we're going to create that. So in this circumstance, and we've got that image highlighted, so we can actually just go ahead and use that. I'm going to export that. Now, here's the little dialog, because it's telling me that that file already exists. Now, we know that that file is the wrong size, so we don't want that file. So what we can do is overwrite it. Or you could give it a unique name if you want to, but we're going to overwrite it. And then it should bring us up. So we've got our new overwritten image of the same name. And we're going to right click on that and look at properties and details. And now we can see that this image conforms because the height is a maximum of 1050. So it's not breaching either the width or the height. So we've got our three presets. And that's what we can use. And that's the images resized for the NIPA round. And you've created your presets and you can use them time and time again. So there you go.